Hi everyone, welcome back to English Language Resource. In this video, we're going to have a quick insight of a short story, A Handful of Dates, written by Tayeb Salih. Let's have a short introduction about the story. It is a short story published originally in Arabic in 1964 in a collection of stories, The Wedding of Zen. The action of the story, as with many of the stories written by Tayeb Saleh, occurs in the fictional setting of the village of Wad Hamid, which is in central Sudan. This short story is told through the eyes of a young boy as he experiences an epiphany or critical moment of awareness that perhaps marks his passage from a child to an adult. The boy's love and admiration for his grandfather is diminished as the boy listens to his grandfather describe Masood and observes the treatment of the man for whom the young boy feels a likeness. A quick summary: a young boy who idolizes his grandfather and wishes to be like him when he is older. The grandfather and Masood had a mutual dislike for each other. Masood had made sure to tell everyone to be careful not to cut the heart of the palm. Once the dates were harvested, the grandfather and a few others went over, separated the dates, took them, and left, leaving none for Masood. Before the grandfather left, he went over to Masood and told him that he was still indebted to him. The little boy disliked the way the grandfather treated Masood, so he then ran off and threw up all the dates he had eaten. It is a narrative story in which the narrator has used figurative language to paint pictures, similes, metaphors, and a more in-depth story in order to make the reader to visualize everything for a more interesting read, so it is easier to connect with the plot. At first, there is more of a happy tone showcasing the boy's life. Then tone changes with the entrance of Masood's character. We sense tension, darkness, fear in the tone of the text during the conversation of the boy with his grandfather. There is a realization of greed and abuse towards the later half in the harvesting scene. The boy starts to notice what is happening to Masood and finds that he is actually a good person. The story displays disgust, pity, and sorrow at the end. The focus is on the development of characters and highlights the theme of morality. The setting has a cultural impact due to it being set in a foreign place. This includes the importance of community and what it means to be a powerful figure in that community compared to Western culture. Dates represent truth, endurance, fertility, and things that are pure and good. The theme of the story deals with the idea of not having a strong sense of morals and the misuse of power, which is immoral. The action that the grandfather does are immoral and it shows the boy's disgust at the end. There is a universally It is a universal theme as depicted in the story where exploitation is very prominent. Exploitation occurs everywhere around the world. Governments tend to exploit citizens and sugarcoat the true occurrences. They often misuse the power to persuade society into believing and doing things that only benefit the government. The government can take away your possessions, and they tend to believe that it is your own fault for living an honest life in comparison to their dishonesty. The young boy was the only character that went through a psychological development. Intelligent, innocent, yet arrogant child, As it says in the text, I believe I was his favorite grandchild. No wonder, for my cousins were a stupid bunch, and I, so they say, was an intelligent child. He always looked up to his grandfather as a role model and always viewed him as a wise man that did no wrong. The grandfather just wanted more of Masood's wealth and all the possessions he owned. The grandfather that he used to idolize and respect was always an avaricious and selfish person. The young boy says at the very end, I felt at that moment that I hated him. This remark, the full of psychological development of the young boy. Of course, there was a conflict depicted in the story. First, there was a conflict of a man versus society and the conflict of a man with other man. The first conflict, Masood and the village people. No one pays any attention or respect to Masood. Despite his good nature, people don't listen to him, such as the kid who was using the skull to hit the tree. When Masood told him to be careful, the boy ignored him. At the end of the harvesting, some of the village men who are acquainted with the grandfather take Masood's share of dates, not speaking against the mistreatment Masood is facing. The other conflict that has been depicted in the story is man versus man, that is, Masood versus the grandfather. The grandfather expresses his dislike for Masood right from the very beginning, takes advantage of Masood's debt to him by maybe even putting interest and taking everything at one time rather than leaving some dates so that Masood can make an income. This way, he might keep asking for more money since he can't get an income from elsewhere. Masood is at a stage where repaying the debt to the grandfather is difficult, but he does not complain. Masood has become poor due to the debt. There's a confusion or disturbance in the story, as you can see in page 126. The first paragraph, the position has changed now, though, and I think that before Allah calls to him, I shall have brought the remaining third portion of Masood as well. Disturbing because the grandfather is thinking of Masood's death and relating it to himself as a benefit. Masood is his neighbor and he should get respect, but instead he gets disrespected. Instead of the grandfather's protecting his neighbor, he makes him feel uneasy all the time and even at the time of harvesting the dates. It is also depicted in second paragraph. I saw my young companions swarming like ants around the trunks of the palm trees, gathering dates and eating most of them. This seemed confusing to us because usually you would not see people gathering around and taking something that is not theirs would be considered uncivil and abnormal. You could tell that Masood had a very low status if people were just taking his things. Masood did not even receive a sack of his own dates that he harvested, and that was confusing all well. Literary devices has been used thoroughly in the lesson in the story as given in the following lines. It was soft and luxuriant and as soft as cotton wool. His beautiful voice and powerful laugh that resembled the gurgling of water. The clump of dates began to drop like something descending from the heavens. I would sit on the bank and gaze at the strip of water that wound away eastwards and hid behind a thick wood of acacia trees. My young companions swarming like ants around the trunks of the palm trees, making his way towards us with extreme slowness, like a man who wants to retreat. Put my finger into my throat and swept up the dates I had eaten. Felt my hand stretch out towards him as though I wanted to touch the hem of his garment. heard him make a noise in his throat like the rasping of a lamb being slaughtered. It is a formalistic story. There's the depiction of irony, characterization, and illusions used to reinforce the theme. Of course, there is a connection between the beginning and the end. The river was once beautiful, now is tarnished by the sacred. Dates represent endurance. Money and land repeat to show greed and exploitation. So, this was a brief description, a summary, and brief detail about the story, a handful of dates. For further suggestions or queries, do write in the comment box.